Welcome to At Your Service, the service management podcast on the CRM Audio Network, with your hosts, Business Solutions MVPs, Sarah Jelinek, Scott LaFonte, and Shawn Tabor. Resco is a leading provider of mobile solutions for Dynamics 365. Resco Mobile CRM is an invaluable tool for the field service engineer working in field service for Dynamics 365. Other solutions from Resco include Route Planner, which combines geographic and calendar data, even taking into account variables such as traffic and weather, to ensure that your field agents plan the optimal route possible to their work sites. Resco also offers inspections, which allows you to create, assign, complete, and evaluate field inspections with ease. Inspections enables you to shape every step of your inspection process. For more information on these solutions, or to request a demo for any of their offerings, visit www.resco.net. We thank Resco for sponsoring this episode of At Your Service. Welcome to another episode of At Your Service, the service-related podcast on the CRM Audio Network. It's a new year, same crew, new pod. And as always, I have Scott LaFonte and the diva herself, Sarah Jelinek. How you guys doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Shawn.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Doing well.
Good. So we ended 2018 with a best of. It was our everything you need to know about customer service that Sarah and I did months and months ago. It seems like forever ago. But that's how we ended 2018. With 2019, we got some stuff to talk about. There's a little bit of Field Service Mobile upgrades information we should share that Scott, you and I have been dealing with. There's a little bit of new features and functionality in universal resource scheduling, which is cool, and some other stuff we're going to talk about. Does that sound good?
Fantastic.
I'm all for it. Let's do it.
All right. So, Scott, why don't we talk a little bit about Field Service Mobile and the upgrade process? That's been kind of an interesting process we've been going through on our project, and let's share with the audience here some of our trials and tribulations that we've been dealing with.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one that anyone out there that's using Field Service Mobile right now and is using the Microsoft app, or even if they're not, they're going to want to take advantage of. And anyone that's been configuring in Woodford now knows that for the existing Woodford project, the highest version you go up to is 9.1.
Right.
And if you've kept abreast of what Resco has been doing in terms of robust capabilities and new functions and features, they're at 11.3 and change. I think it's 11.3.1, something along that. And there's some features that unfortunately we can't take advantage of. So Microsoft, in partnership with Resco, has put together that new mobile project, which brings it up to 11.1. So we're still not 11.2, 11.3, but we're getting there. And there'll be smaller kind of updates. They won't be this massive one. But a lot of us have said, okay, well, great. How do we get our existing project onto this, that where we can use it to take advantage of the new mobile client, to take advantage of some of the other functions that are available in Resco, such as your list views look more like you would see in Excel, where it's nice and lined up, and some other functions. And so Microsoft's been working really hard at putting together documentation for everyone out there as to what this would take. And it's no small feat.
Right.
Let's just say that.
Right.
I think for those folks that have just started down that path of mobile, it's a lot easier. For customers that have been out there for a while, have a lot of configurations and customizations, I attribute this to like any other upgrade plan. It needs to be planned out, and I don't think it's a full blown upgrade where it should take weeks upon weeks, but it's something that takes planning and testing and coordination of effort to make sure that as issues arise or anything comes up that may be of a surprise, that you're taking that into consideration and working through that. So I don't know, Shawn. I mean, there's a couple different, and Shawn and Sarah, there's a couple different options that Microsoft has presented to us, and that documentation is, I think it comes out this week.
Right.
And that is, the first way to upgrade is just compare your existing project, open that up in another window, and just go into the new Woodford project and manually redo all of your customizations one by one.
So that's clearly not the optimal.
Correct. I mean, that would be, think about, the nice thing is of course, is if you don't have a lot, then sure, go ahead and do it. But if you have a lot of form rules, if you have a lot of JavaScript, there's certain things you can export from the environment, like the HTML rules and things like that. But for the most part, you're not going to want to do that and go through all of your entities and what's read and create and all the different rules. That's very cumbersome. The other option involves GitHub, and what it is you're comparing the existing out of the box field service Woodford project from V7, so and to your existing configuration Woodford project, getting those the diff on that. And then getting the new Woodford project, doing the diff on that, and determining what files are updated and what's different. And then taking the files that are in your current configuration project and carefully moving them over. And it's funny because people think, well, Woodford, that's just one file. Well, yes, but if you zip it up and then you extract it, it becomes a whole bunch of files. So that's the process that's going to be documented and be put out there. So if you contact Microsoft now, they give you these options. And so we're undertaking that now on our one project, and it's a pretty significant effort. And so the nice thing is that Microsoft has said that this isn't typical. It won't be an ongoing kind of thing now that they're lockstep with Resco, but it's definitely one that has some folks up in a little angst and cautious to go ahead and moving very slowly.
Well, that's understandable. If you're talking about having to upgrade and have to just recreate everything, or, obviously we do this with every project. You just exercise caution, test, make sure everything goes good before you actually make the big move.
Yeah.
So you brought up a good point. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to just say one other thing is, I know that some folks out there may be thinking, well, Resco 11.2 or Woodford 11.2 had some really nice new features, especially if you're doing any sort of custom development and coding. Mm-hmm. And great, we can only use up to 11.1 now. So when do we go to 11.2, 11.3? My word of advice to everyone is, patience. It'll get there. This is just come out. Microsoft will be, bringing out those features and functions as soon as they can. If in doubt, log a Microsoft support ticket, or if you have access to, if you're a partner, go ahead and use the partner community within, Yammer, and reach out to Microsoft that way and see if you can get any updates on that.
Well, I think the thing to take away is this is a foundational step to move to a much more. I wouldn't necessarily say we're going to be in lockstep with Resco, because I think there's always going to be a slight delta between the two. But it's a foundational step to where we're on the same major version, let's say.
Yeah.
Right. So if Resco goes to 12, we'll go to 12. But we won't be. It won't be like before where we were on 9 and they were on 11. Right.
Correct. So, I always feel we'll probably be one or two minor versions behind.
Right, which makes
just
sense.
because it would be impossible.
Right. It makes sense. And but I think something that we should also talk about is, in doing this update, why would we do this update? What are some of the cool features and capabilities that we're going to get when we do this update?
Yeah. So if you just look at pure Woodford/Resco functionality that's been in place for a while, you're looking at the ability to align forms and views a little bit better. You're looking at you can have multiple forms now for a particular entity and use form rules. So similar to you would see in the web UI of Dynamics, where you could kind of hide and show things based on certain conditions. Well, now you can show in a completely different form factor in the mobile for field service based on rules. So those are some pretty significant features there. There's a more robust GPS / location tracking, and the capability to go ahead and see that location tracking within Woodford itself, and also within the web UI. So there's those functionalities that are there, and then Microsoft's put some pretty cool features on the homepage where you can scan a customer asset directly from the homepage when you get into mobile, and it'll pull up that asset. So there's some pretty cool new features out there. What I would suggest is go out and look at what Resco has done through 11.1, so from 9.1 to 11.1, and take a look at some of the other features and functions. But my biggest thing is the flexible views and forms is going to be pretty significant, because it allows a lot of flexibility that I wish I had 6 months ago. And so that becomes a question of, do we go back now and revisit those? Is that a point release or a enhancement release of certain functionality that we had to configure around? So those are some cool little architectural challenges, I guess, so to speak, that I'll have to be looking at. And the nice thing is that everyone can look at that now. So customers in the past that had challenges and they just couldn't do it in the mobile, there's a lot of there's a lot of opportunity now to be a lot more flexible, and even do it based on now, hey, I got this form for resources in this organizational unit, or this form for some other types of users or resources. So it kind of throws a little extra I think configuration ease in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking forward to getting my hands on that in a customer environment, not just my MVP environment.
Yeah, just looking at some of those features, I know that we had talked in a previous session about some of the new functionality that we're going to get with the client. And, as I was just thinking of, potential customer implementation of, just being able to have different forms, I think would be huge, based on, what you're working on, who's doing what, the different information are recorded. I think that would be a huge feature, without having to build something unique for every person.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is, so if you go into your existing Woodford project and do configuration, and it asks you, it needs to update. What updates? And you see, hey, I can create a new form. I can create 2 forms in my existing projects. What is Scott talking about? Well, I challenge you, go ahead and do that and publish it, and then let me know the results that you get, because it will not work. So I thought the same thing, and I said, well, I wonder if I can make it work. Yeah, no, you can't. So and it just has to do with the versioning and the functions that are available behind the scenes that 9.1 just can't take advantage of. But, in theory, could you go ahead and set it up, a new form, and just not make it visible and valid? I guess you could do that in anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
But I would probably urge more on the side of go ahead and design it outside of Woodford, or even in a non-published project within Woodford, and just keep it readily available,
mm-hmm.
so that when you are ready and you complete the upgrade, then go ahead and put it in. I don't know if I would put something in that should not function, especially in a published version of a project, whether it's in production or not.
Right. Good to know.
And as of
Exciting.
recording date, today's the 14th of January. We don't quite see that information up on Docs yet, but as soon as we see that posted on the Docs site, we will make sure to get an update out on our Twitter and also on the atyourservicepod.com blog. So, another interesting set of new functionality that we recently received is with universal resource scheduling. We're looking at that as well on our current project. There's a lot of stuff we're doing on our current project, Scott. but why don't we talk a little bit about what new capabilities are out there in terms of scheduling and how people can take advantage of that?
Yeah, so, anyone that's been keeping up to speed, I mean, Dan Gittler and the entire Microsoft team's been doing a really fantastic job with scheduling. So most folks probably haven't looked at, some of the features around fulfillment in the past, and some of that fulfillment functions have changed. They've become a little bit easier. You might think, oh, what am I talking about? Take a look at like intervals and time groups that work really well on when you're looking at the schedule assistant. So now you can kind of group things by well, you were able to, but it was a little more challenging from a UI perspective and a layout perspective. But now I can say, let's say I have a technician that finishes work at 11:27. Well, now if I want to do everything on every half hour, I could have it look at, okay, I could schedule at 11:30 or 12 or 12:31, 1:30. So I have that capability to kind of look at certain time blocks based on how my business typically works. And I can look at that from a individual resource requirement or work order and book it through that way. The other thing I could do, of course, is if I wanted every work order or resource requirement to have that, really it's at the resource requirement level, I could create some sort of workflow that every time a resource requirement is created to go ahead and fill in a fulfillment preference. But some of the really cool things that they've been doing are around the resource crews and facility scheduling. I think those are some things that, I don't know, Sarah or Shawn, what you guys have seen, but the capabilities now to have a crew that I could schedule, or even a facility, especially like if I'm a healthcare hospital or a doctor's office, or even if I'm a body shop, or any other sort of manufacturer that has different facilities or rooms within a facility, to be able to go ahead and schedule that and book a physical location I think is fantastic. So I don't know what your guys' thoughts were on that as well. See if you guys thought, if you found a way in the past to go ahead and do that. And I know people have done some really interesting things with the extensibility within URS, but now that it's physically here out of the box, to me, it's just it's exciting to go ahead and see these things and being able to use the schedule assistant to even book a room. It's pretty cool.
Oh, it's exciting. I know when I used to back in the good old days. It's not the good old days. Back in the old days, when I was working with Dynamics 3.0, CRM 3.0 at the time, and in 4.0, and I started to look at the service scheduling, right, which is just the very kind of beginning of where we are now with field service. It's beyond obviously what we saw then, and just talking about using facility and equipment, and using the example of booking a repair bay for something to do work. As you mentioned, like if you're like a body shop, I need this bay to work on this vehicle, so I need to make sure it's available when I'm booking an appointment. That to me is really exciting to be able to do that. And I think the crew scheduling, back then you could say, well, I need this resource, and you kind of had to do your I can't even remember the word we usually call it now, but it's kind of like that scheduling rule that we had to create of saying, what are the resources that we need? What's, capacity that we might have? And it was kind of neat, but it wasn't, anywhere near what we see now with field service. So I'm really excited to see some of the functionality. I personally can't think of, in a lot of the environments that I've worked with, it's been one resource for scheduling, one person to go do this. But the fact that it's going to be that we can have a crew now, if you think you've got a couple people that need to go, for example, in a building, you got to do maintenance, you got to have someone fix the plumbing and do, some of the sheetrock repair as an example, for a property that you own, wanting to send multiple people out there, in a finite amount of time that you maybe have an office or an apartment building or apartment or something that's free to be able to do all that at once, and to be able to make sure that, it works for everybody at that time. I think that's really exciting.
Yep. And one of the other ones now, so you brought up a good point, is a lot of times we see it where, it's, hey, I got to assign this one resource to this job. But what if, for example, like a large manufacturer or, even some, devices or, hey, I'm going to a site and I need to install, 45 IoT devices, for all these pieces of equipment. So you might have multiple resources based on, and they may not even be a crew, but multiple resources based on skill or location. So now there's even the possibility, forget just the crew, but now I could do multi-resource scheduling and say, hey, I need, with what they're calling requirements groups. So for example, let's say I need 2 technicians, one that has maybe, one set of one skill, and then I need a resource that has a completely different skill. Then, or even if it's, hey, I got to look at the same territory, or maybe I can look across organizational units or whatever. I can create these requirement groups now and basically search with a single search, find what I need based on that grouping. And so if you have jobs, I think it comes in handy where you have jobs that are very similar, not all the time, but hey, if I got this type of job, or this work order type, or this incident type, or whatever it may be, and they're always the same sort of configuration, that requirements grouping would come in extremely handy, because I know I'm going to need 2 or 3 people that are going to have this skill set, and now I can go ahead and do a single search and find those people,
right?
And which is huge. So now I can, on the resource requirement, I can go ahead and say, anytime, and you could do this 2 ways, right? You could do it manually and just say, okay, I'm on this requirement for this job. Let me put in this resource group. But if you know that it's always the same sort of configuration, I could also create a workflow or some sort of plugin that would always put that requirement group in there. And now when I go ahead and click book on that requirement or even that work order, what will happen is the scheduler assistant will pull up. It'll know that it's got a requirements group associated, and it'll basically say, okay, here's who you need to book, and it'll be the multiple. So it's just really cool things that they've been doing. And so I see this as being, pretty robust capability and I look at it from a field service perspective, but of course, since it's URS, and requirements are based on resources, not just field service, it could be really for anything. Let's just say you're doing a sales call to a customer, and lead follow up, and you're bringing in some sort of trainee. So these are things that you could, in theory, do that. It's like, on every call, I'm going to bring in a trainee, and if there's one available, and go ahead and do that as well. So like, there's shadowing, and we do that a lot. A lot of our customers have that, where they had someone come and shadow, and now I can sit there and say, okay, I can look for a resource that has a particular status or a particular skill of trainee or whatever it may be, and go ahead and make sure that they're always scheduled on these types of jobs. I think that's a great new function and feature.
Yeah, that's a great example, because it. Sorry, go ahead, Shawn.
Go ahead, Sarah. No, go ahead. You were getting ready to think.
No, I was just saying. That's a great example. I think when we start talking about universal resource scheduling, I tend to think of just field service examples. But you're right, and a sales opportunity that, I want to, or lead, I should say, I want to bring obviously the salesperson. I want to bring an architect. Maybe I want to bring a consultant. Maybe I need to bring, someone from our proposal team that's going to be there, or an analyst to take requirements. I know that another company that claims to, create CRM just like Dynamics does. It's a highly known competitor. When they do that, they have a huge resource pool that they bring on site initially. So being able to quickly schedule that instead of saying, okay, well, let's check everybody's calendars and find out who's got the skill that we need, who's got the availability, and when can we find time to work, and that's just going to lessen the load for people. So that's a great example. Love that.
Yeah, and also some of the improvements that they've made to the schedule board in interacting with the crew really does. I mean, it's not just a straight bar and dependent, and you can't discern who's what, the individual crew member availability on a given work order or resource booking. You can expand that right within the schedule board with no additional configuration to really see the granular details of the crew availability, which I think is really cool as well.
Awesome. Well, all sorts of wonderful things I get to try out when I've got free time to explore this more. And if I don't know what I'm doing, I obviously have two great guys on the call here I can ask.
And if you can figure out how you can get some additional free time, please let me know. I would.
Yeah, that'd be great.
More than excited to understand your trick.
Working on that, yeah.
Your
voodoo, if you will.
So yeah, so there's some. I mean, and Dan Gittler is. Shawn, we've spoken to him, on a call and at BizApp Summit in person, and he's just such a great guy. He's extremely knowledgeable. And the really cool thing about him and all the other PMs that we've met at Microsoft is they really want to hear this, feedback that we have if we hear of some other, cool feature or function that we typically are seeing in the field that we think might be of value to put into the product. And they're always willing to go ahead and do that. I just did that the other day with the field service team regarding time off requests. And they thought it was a really good idea that they're going to explore. So, they're just fantastic people to work with, and they're so busy, but they're also willing to take the time to understand what we're seeing and hearing in some of our pain points. So, and like I said, the URS team has done a fantastic job getting scheduling to, where it was even, 2 years ago. It's just such a tremendous jump to where it is. And if you haven't looked at it in quite a number of years and you think it's just simple scheduling now, oh boy, sit down and start playing with it and read all the blogs that are out there and docs and everything else, because you have a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, the enhancements since just December with multi-resource scheduling, with requirement groups, with facility scheduling, with crew scheduling, and all the updates for booking rules. It's amazing how much work they have done in such a little space.
Yeah. So I have a question for you guys before we wrap for the day. Yes. I was just tinkering around because Scott was talking about the features that we saw with the new mobile client that's available to us now, and one question I came up with was regarding inspections. Okay. I see that when I deployed the Woodford solution to my environment, and I was looking around, I see I now have an entity for inspections. I was diving into a little bit, and it kind of looks like it's a questionnaire, basically, that you're setting up to ask questions and gathering information and being able to take photos. Just wondering, for any of the implementations that you guys have worked on or planning to work on, or just wondering about how you could use it, is how in an environment, like if I want to do inspections like on a property or something like that, how do you guys currently use inspections, and just any tips or tricks on that, on utilizing it and kind of connecting it to other information in Dynamics 365?
Yeah, those are some good questions, and I know up until recently, inspections has kind of been in a little black box, right? Kind of standalone. It's a Resco function and feature, and now it's really coming into play a lot, especially now that we can do this Microsoft natively integrated with Microsoft Dynamics 365, where in the past it was there, you could kind of use it, but it wasn't something that was natively integrated. So now, the nice thing about it, the inspections is that you can just kind of drag and drop questions and kind of do that nesting function and features and different rules. Kind of like if you think about voice of the customer surveys, where you can have rules and skip questions or ask another question based on an answer. You can kind of do all of that stuff, which is great. But you could also get a little bit more complicated and do things with JavaScript as well. So you have that sort of functionality because it's all still very robust. And then what it does is, in addition to that, you can go ahead and schedule it similar to, you think about scheduling now in with universal resource scheduling. You could add it to that to your schedule board or things like that, or you can also, if you have users that are using scheduling within the mobile app, you can enable that function of scheduling, and it kind of looks very similar UI, where you see the resources and you can go ahead and schedule the inspections that way. So, and then what would happen is, as you go ahead and schedule them, they would be for basically existing customers or equipment, or think about it. I look at it always as if the whole car insurance kind of thing, right? You get into a car accident, and now you have to go, someone needs to come out, a claims adjuster needs to come out and do a physical inspection and take pictures and get your signature and all of that. And that's what this inspection tool can do. It still has that kind of capability to take the photos right from the mobile device and add it to the inspection, and you can do your signature capture with your finger or stylus, or anything like that. And you don't need to be connected. That's the biggest thing. So if we look at it from that whole mobile functionality, especially if you're looking at it, take field service aside, but if you're using the Field Service Mobile app or the Resco app, right? Because we do have customers that aren't doing field service, but they use Resco for offline capabilities. You can do it offline. You can do check in and check out the inspection or the questionnaire. So you can check your changes in and make sure you don't lose anything, and then come back to it afterwards. Like, let's just say something happens, you're outside and all of a sudden a lightning storm comes. Well, in Florida, you're not going to stand outside very long and take that inspection. You're going to go seek shelter. So we can save it and come back to it later.
Right.
So all of that's in place, and then you have the capability to, of course, with analytics and everything, you can look at all of the data and determine trends or anything else. So you can use Power BI. You can use even dashboards and charts within the mobile app and build it that way as well. So there's still a lot of that capability. So it would be tied to resources and how many resources are doing inspections, or how many customers are having inspections maybe on their equipment or facility or whatever else it may be.
Okay.
So it's pretty cool. I started playing around with the new version very recently, and it's just extremely intuitive, and Resco does a really good job too of documenting different functions and features. I mean, they even have a manual out there to how to use the designer and using the scheduler or anything else. So their documentation, I must say, I mean, even just from the Woodford function, is usually top notch.
Okay.
And if I ever have a question, Resco support they're fantastic. I mean, they're very quick to respond. Usually give me exactly what I'm looking for the first time. Sometimes if I'm not clear, they'll go ahead and ask me some additional questions, but it's just a solid support group over there as well. So I would say, play around with it. And if you have any questions, of course, you could always come to me. Well, not everyone listening. Sarah can. But let me rephrase that. And then, of course, anyone else, follow the standard support, or if you have your Resco support contact, go ahead and contact them as well if anything comes up.
Or if you need some guidance on how to do that, you could always reach out to us at voice@crm.audio, or you could put a comment on the At Your Service Pod blog, or you could reach out to any of us on Twitter as well. So multiple ways.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
And the interesting thing is it won't show up and say inspections in the mobile. It'll say questionnaires.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or questionnaire. So sometimes that confuses people, like, well, wait a minute, where's my inspection?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now, if you wanted it to say inspections, can you change that to make it say inspection?
Yeah, you can change it.
It's
like anything else in the mobile. You could change things if you want to,
right?
Which is good. But it's I could even tie it to, right? So even people always think, oh, I got to do the questionnaire separately. You can tie the questionnaire to a work order. You can tie the questionnaire to maybe a lead call, or a claim, or a customer service call. So there's all these different things that you could do but of course it's, what's relevant for your customer, for your business, from a mobile perspective, right? So, I mean, a lot of us would use Unified Service Desk for customer service when we're at our desk. But what if we tie something in the field to something else?
Right.
Maybe, when, let's just take, insurance. Well, maybe they don't do work orders. Maybe they just do customer service cases, and then they just go ahead and say, hey, Joe, go out there, right? You could, in theory, go ahead and tie this to the case as well. Of course, if you have field service, you would probably tie that case to a work order, to a questionnaire, which then it's all joined anyway. So that's, there's a lot of flexibility.
Well, exciting, because I was looking at this, I'm like, do I build something just to do it, like to build a Power App, or no, it's already included, so definitely explore that instead. Excellent, thank you, appreciate it.
Well, I think
and I'm looking at their documentation right now, and there's a lot out there, so definitely go ahead and we'll go ahead and put the link out there too, Shawn, for the inspection designer manual. So we'll go ahead and put that out there for anyone that's interested. But definitely take a look at it, because I know this comes up quite a bit, and it's come up quite a bit with our engagements and even prospects as well.
Yeah. And you can just send that right to me right now, Scott, just so you know.
you got it, Sarah.
Thank you.
We will put the links to those in the show notes as well. But I think that brings us to the end of our discussion, where we turn it over to our friends at Resco, given that we've been talking about them. I'm sure their ears are burning. And get a little more information from them. So from Scott and Sarah, you guys have a great day, and we'll see you on the next At Your Service. Take it away, Resco.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode. My name is Agnes. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Resco. And first and foremost, I'd like to say Happy New Year. I hope all of you have had such a well and rested holiday break, if those of you did have a break. But getting back to our normal grind here, we're going to go off and start this year with a bit of a recap, or some of the most frequently asked questions that we had, that we noticed at Resco. And it was basically, could anyone tell us a bit of a kind of a play-by-play, or, Resco versus Microsoft mobile options take? And, we thought we'd give you guys a bit of an insight in terms of the history, what maybe Microsoft is offering in comparison to what we have. And then, of course, what we can do to help as well. So for those of you that don't know us, Resco has come a long CRM way in the past 10 years. At the very beginning, some might still remember we were more of a development platform that was fully integrated with Microsoft Visual Studio. A few years in, with the release of the Woodford configuration tool that we have, we changed our image into a nimble and flexible configuration solution. And then yet, some people still receive Resco as a simple limited mobile app. And, what's Resco today? Well, let's find out. So when it comes to Microsoft, however, Power Apps. To understand the value of Power Apps, it's important to understand the difference between model-driven app and a Canvas app. So this is basically for us to kind of show what we have on the market in comparison to what Microsoft has. And Microsoft, for example, has the model-driven app, which is practically the unified client interface. That means the user gets the same experience on all types of devices, whether it's laptops, desktops, tablets, smartphones. What sounds like a very appealing proposition at first brings more problems in real life, a little bit maybe down the road. The fundamental question is why I should have, the same experience on my smartphone as I have on my laptop, with only one difference. The UI is basically form factor friendly. So when I choose a laptop, I do so for a reason. I do much different things, or many different things on a laptop than I do on my smartphone. And I want the smartphone experience to be tailor-made for my work. So out of the office activities and actions that are so much more different to what I do sitting at the desk facing a large office monitor screen. And Resco offers a unique value in this scenario, a mobile experience that is optimized to be your perfect mobile companion to the last bit. So no compromises. Shawn, would you drive a sedan on a Formula One circuit? Scott probably would. Haha. But he is a Yankees fan after all. But I'm sure you would arrange for a fast car first. So the Canvas app provides a completely different experience, right? So Power Apps, like I mentioned, you've got the model-driven app and the Canvas app. And the Canvas app is there to digitize the final analog process in your company. So it allows for designing simple, one-purpose mobile apps with a limited number of screens and functionality. Resco can be used that way too, though. So sure, a bicycle, think Canvas app is a lot of fun and very practical, transportation alternative in congested cities. But try to do your weekly grocery shopping when you're on your bike. It's quite an impossible task. So then we have Field Service Mobile. So Field Service Mobile is a great example of the power of Resco's platform. When it comes to a unique and challenging mobile use case, Microsoft is relying on Resco's technology. So the latest version of the Field Service Mobile app is based on the source code of almost the current version of Resco. So that's great news for all field service customers. They are getting a lot of cool functionality and features that full Resco customers already rely on and enjoy for some quite time. And what about Resco? So Resco, is it an app or is it a platform? What is it today? What's its value? If there is one thing we know well, it's mobile technology. And it needs to be easy to use. It needs to be powerful and intuitive. So to achieve such a mobile app, Resco offers its own mobile technology. And it's more powerful than ever before, really. It brings extra functionality in a form of modules and components, and it's one of the most advanced mobile platforms for business mobile apps. So proof came, in the pudding in around summer 2018, and Resco was named niche player in the Gartner 2018 Magic Quadrant for mobile application development platforms. So whether the requirements are function or UI based, Resco can always deliver. So give Resco a try at resco.net. And if you have any other questions that you'd like answered, please feel free to reach out to us at communications@resco.net, and we can take off more on this topic. Thank you. Until next time. Bye-bye.
On behalf of myself, Shawn Tabor, my co-host Scott LaFonte, and the Dynamics 365 diva Sarah Jelinek, we thank you for listening and subscribing to the podcast. You can reach us at voice@crm.audio. On Twitter, you can follow us, CRM Hobbit for me, for Scott, at FLD Service _Guru, and of course, at Dyn 365 Diva for Sarah. For more information and content about what we spoke about on this episode and others, visit our blog at atyourservicepod.com. This has been At Your Service on the CRM Audio Network, a production of Dynamic Podcasts, LLC.